So for our warm-up today, the directions say find the vertex of each parabola. So the first one's in standard form. When it's in standard form, how do you find the vertex? Good. Negative b over 2a. So in this case, b is negative 8. So negative 8 is 8 over 2 times 2. That's 8 over 4, which is 2. So the x value is 2. How do I find the y value? Plug it in. So y equals 2 times 2 squared minus 8 times 2 plus 6. So that's going to be 4 times 2, which is 8, minus 16 plus 6. So negative 2. So the vertex of my first one is 2, negative 2. Any questions on how I found the vertex of that first parabola? All right, the next one's a lot easier. How do you find the vertex of this parabola? It's in vertex form. You're close. 3, 4 is what he said. There's one thing missing. Where's the negative go? Yeah, remember, it's always the opposite of whatever's next to the x. Okay, so if it's adding 3, it's actually a negative 3. Good. Now, this last one is in intercept form, or you could think of it as being factored already in factored form. How do you find the vertex then? Do you guys remember? It's a couple steps. Set them equal to 0. Good. That'll give us our x-intercepts. So we have an x-intercept of negative 2. We'll have an x-intercept of positive 4. So once you have the x-intercepts, what do you do with them? Yeah, you find the average. Remember, the axis of symmetry will be right in between those since these graphs are symmetric. And the vertex lies on the axis of symmetry. So we need to find the average. So add them together, divide by 2. That gives us 1. So the x value of my vertex is 1. To find the y value, you just plug it back in. So that'll be negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. So the vertex here is at 1, 9. I'll rewrite it so you can actually see it. All right, what are your questions on this? Today, like I said, we are going to finish what we started yesterday. So yesterday we started 5.1. We did mostly just graphs yesterday. Today we're going to look a little bit more into the equations on how you can go from one form to the other. We'll do some graphing as well, just as a review. And then your homework tonight will be to finish the homework you started last night. So here's our first example. What form is this in? Standard form. And you can tell it's in standard form because you have an x squared term, an x term, and a constant. So you want to start by finding a, b, and c. That will help you find your vertex. We already talked about how the vertex in standard form is negative b over 2a. So negative 2 over 2 times 1 is negative 1. So the x value of my vertex will be negative 1. How do I find the y value of my vertex? Plug it in. Good. So keep it in parentheses when you plug it in. It will help you keep your signs straight. So that's going to be 1 minus 2 plus 2, which is 1. So my vertex is at the point negative 1, 1. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line through the vertex. So it's the line x equals negative 1 because x equals lines are always vertical. So negative 1, 1 is right here. And this graph will be symmetric across this axis right here. What are your questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are we ever going to have an axis of symmetry that's y?
That's a y equals line? Yes. second semester, we'll do parabolas that open sideways, left or right. So for now, they're always going to be x equals. Yep. But not always, just always for now. Does that make sense? All right, next thing I want to do, find some more points. What do you guys want to plug in? 0, it's the easiest one. When you plug in 0, you get 0 squared plus 0 plus 2, so we're just going to get 2. So I have a point at 0, 2. Since it's symmetric, where do I also have a point? Negative 2, 2. Great. Now, you can ask yourself, can you really see the shape of this graph? I'm going to argue that you cannot. So I'm now going to plug in 1. So 1 squared is 1 plus 2 plus 2. That gives me 5. So I have a point at 1, 5, which also gives me a point at negative 3, 5. Now you can see the shape a little better. Remember, these are smooth curves. They're not V's. So connect them. And then you can always go back and double check. Should it be opening up? Yes, our A is a positive number, so it should be opening up like a U. So I'm good here. Any questions? All right, here's example 2. What form is this in? Vertex form. It actually says in the directions that it's in vertex form. So how do you graph when it's in vertex form? Yeah. This is where it's super easy to find the vertex. That's why we call it vertex form. So it's the opposite of whatever's next to our x. And then this sign stays the same. This is our y value. So we have 3, 2 as our vertex. What's my axis of symmetry? The line x equals 3. Don't just say 3. I don't know what 3 is. It has to be the line x equals 3. All right, then what? Find x, find y, find another point. What do you guys want to plug in? 0, sure. When you plug in 0 here, you have negative 0 minus 3 squared plus 2. That's going to give me negative, and then negative 3 squared is going to be positive 9. So negative 7. Any questions on that? Order of operations messes a lot of people up here. This is negative 3 squared, which is positive 9, but you have that negative out front, so it's negative 9. Plus 2, so negative 7. Oh, I'm actually off the graph. That's okay. That was how many? 3 over from our axis of symmetry, so go 3 over the other way. I'm way off the graph now, but you get the general gist. Your graphs are a little bigger than mine, so yours should fit. But it's going to look something like that. Is this opening the right direction? Yeah. A in this case is negative 1. Remember, in vertex form, A is what's out in front of the parentheses. So it should be opening down. I'm definitely good here. What are your questions on this? All right, you can probably guess what form 3 is going to be in. The only form we haven't talked about today. Intercept form? Depending on the A value. So the question was, how do you know when it's opening up or down? So we'll just go back to number 1. Here, do you see A is positive? It's just a 1. So that's what it's opening up. Here, A was negative, so it's opening down. So it just depends on the sign of your A value. A in intercept form is the number in front of the parentheses as well. So here A is just 1. It's positive, so our graph should be opening up. All right, how do I start graphing in intercept form? This is the one that's kind of different. You go kind of backwards. Yeah, you set them equal to 0. That'll give you your x-intercepts. Pretty easy to tell what they're going to be here. Negative 2 and positive 2. So a point at negative 2, I have a point at positive 2. And then what do I do? If I plug them in, I get 0. That's why I know these. So I don't want to plug them in. What do I want to do? Find the average. Good. So -2 plus 2 divided by 2, that's just going to be 0. If you don't like finding the averages, remember, you can just kind of count, okay? 2 over, 2 over. That's right in the middle. So it's going to be 0. To find the vertex, you plug 0 in. All right, so y equals, that's going to be 2 when you plug 0 in times -2, which is -4. So my vertex is at 0, -4. So it's opening up. And we already said this one should open up because A is +1. So we are good. What are your questions? So the new part of today's lesson starts now. It says write the quadratic function in standard form. Remind me what standard form should look like. Ax squared. Good, and it's a y equals. So I want to get it to have an x squared term followed by an x term followed by a constant. Right now it's in intercept form. Do you guys remember how to expand something like this? Yeah, you distribute. You actually double distribute. So I'm going to keep the negative out front. I'm going to worry about that later. You take this first x and multiply it by both terms in the second set of parentheses. So that would be x squared minus 9x. Then you distribute the second term to both terms in the second set of parentheses. So that's plus 4x minus 36. When you first learned this, someone might have called it the FOIL method. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. That's kind of an old term. They're getting away from calling it the FOIL method. But they used to call it the FOIL method because you multiply the front terms, and then the outside terms, and then the inside terms, and then the last terms. Now they usually say double distribute because you're distributing the x, and then you're distributing the 4. Either way, you should get the same thing. So before I do that negative, I'm just going to combine like terms. The middle two are usually like terms. So this gives us -5x minus 36. And now you can deal with that negative sign, so all the signs are going to change. And we're done. Whoops, there's a negative right there. So again, that last step, all I did was take that negative, it's like a -1, and multiplied it by each term. So this is how to go from intercept form to standard form. You just double distribute or FOIL, if that's what your teacher called it. I always say double distribute. What are your questions? All right. Now we're going to write it in standard form again. But what form is it in now? Vertex form. Good. So this one's a little bit trickier, actually. So I'm going to keep it y equals 3. Now, what does this mean right here? What does that squared mean? Yeah, I'm going to end up double distributing, but if I wanted to write it all out, what does it mean? Yeah, it's x minus 1 times x minus 1. It's basically just saying you have x minus 1 twice. And then you add 8. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can distribute the 3 first. You can double distribute, then distribute the 3. That's really the only two combinations I can think of. There's probably other ways to do it. I am just going to double distribute and then worry about the 3. So that's going to be x squared minus 1x minus 1x again plus 2 plus 8. I'm going to combine like terms. So I end up here. Any questions on how I got here? Remember, when you are distributing, this is -1, so is this. The sign stays with the term right behind it. All right, now I can distribute that 3, and then my final step will be to add the 8. So this is going to be 3x squared minus 6x plus 6 plus 8. So my final answer is 3x squared minus 6x plus 14. What are your questions? All right, here's another one. Again, this one is in intercept. No, it's in vertex form, excuse me. So what does that mean? X plus 3 quantity squared.
X plus 3, x plus 3.
Yeah, x plus 3 times x plus 3 plus 4. What do I do? Double distribute. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9 plus 4. So x squared plus 6x plus 13. And I'm done. What are your questions here? None? Here's another one. This one's in intercept form. Again, I wanted to get into standard form, so I want the x squared term, then an x term, then a constant. Ideas? Double distribute again. X squared plus 2x minus 2x minus 4. What happens in the middle?
X squared means constant.
Yeah, you might remember this from when you learned a factor. This is called the difference of two squares. You can see right here, this is a squared term, this is a squared term, it's a minus in front. It factors a little weird. These are pretty easy to factor once we get into factoring. But now we're just multiplying. So they turn out like this. The middle terms always cancel when it's a difference of two squares. So it's just x squared minus 4. We actually graphed this one earlier today. What are your questions on this? Today you'll only be going from one of the other forms to standard form. We'll learn standard form to the other various forms a little later in the chapter, but today you're just basically multiplying. Questions?
So we don't have to graph these.
Depending on the directions.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll say get it in standard form and graph. Sometimes it'll just say get it in standard form. So just on these examples in the notes, we did not have to graph, no. All right, here's your homework. You'll notice it's the exact same assignment from yesterday. So if you got a really good start on it yesterday, you should be good. If you finished it, great. Go back and check your work. You guys have the rest of class to work on this. We are going to go over the assignments that I owe you from last week. So you'll be getting some stuff back. Let me know if you guys have questions, though, as you work through this.